now nobody can deny what Black people have been trying to allude to for so long now. And I can remember when I was younger, my friend, her mother, she told me that if I didn't do anything wrong, then I wouldn't have anything to fear from police.
Mm, mm,
And I don't think she was ill-intentioned. I don't think she's racist. I just think it came from a certain level of ignorance. Like she's never lived a day in the color of a like the skin color of a Black person.
yeah.
She's never had to deal with, like in her reality, in her world, if she didn't do anything wrong, she wouldn't have to fear police or,
Yeah.
being stopped for no reason.
What if you, with purpose and mindfulness, decided to surround yourself with positivity? What if you walked away from negative energy? What if you were constantly the positive energy in every room you walked into until it became so contagious that you positively impacted everyone around you? How would that impact your life? You're listening to Compassionate Mindfulness with Xenia, the podcast that will inspire you to use your story to change the world.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. In today's conversation, I welcome back Brandon Dawson-Jarvis, a Montreal-based social entrepreneur who completely turned his life around through yoga. Yoga has allowed him to better connect with himself and with others, and it's a big reason why he does not shy away from sharing stories about his past. He's now a yoga instructor and has founded Grove Campus, a company that provides eco-friendly yoga mats. He also offers pay what you can yoga and meditation sessions and uses the contributions to organize and execute community events and initiatives. He focuses on using his business to give back to the community, beginning with making sure his yoga classes are accessible to all. Among other initiatives, his efforts have resulted in helping families in need with school supplies and holiday toys. Brandon is passionate about building stronger communities, and that is exactly why he is an amazing guest for this special edition of the podcast, in which we celebrate Black History Month by getting comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. To get to know Brandon a little better, check out the description for the link to his website and the link to our first conversation, in which he walks us through his amazing journey of resilience. So without further ado, here is Brandon Dawson-Jarvis. Brandon, again, thank you so much for your time. And I have to start off by saying congratulations for recently being chosen for the 2022 class of Black Changemakers. You were a part of 28 current day changemakers from our Black communities who are helping to shape our future. And I am so proud and very happy for you, Brandon. So again, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Happy to be happy, honored, humbled to be chosen. Yeah, it's a nice award, and yeah, excited to meet the other change makers and see what everybody's bringing to the table.
Yeah, of course. We are in our season of intentional living, and for the month of February, we celebrate Black History Month. And the way I chose to celebrate Black History Month is by engaging in somewhat uncomfortable conversations and get comfortable with the uncomfortable in order to inspire change. So it goes without saying that you are a change maker, and it's one of the reasons I needed to have you again on my podcast. And I think that particularly for these types of conversations, we need people who have empathy and are able to articulate things in a way that will shed light on what is going on in a very matter-of-fact way, but with a lot of compassion. And based on our last conversation, I just knew I needed to have you on for this segment.
Mm-hmm.
because Black people all over the world have been going through so much for so long. And I believe that through these difficult conversations and our ability to truly listen, we will be able to begin to understand the person who's seeking to be heard, what he or she is going through. So my first question to you is, when it comes to racial injustice, and particularly towards Black people, how would you say we can start these uncomfortable conversations?
I think the conversations are, I think they're already happening. I think what's fortunate out of the unfortunate circumstances is that now nobody can deny what Black people have been trying to allude to for so long now. And I can remember when I was younger, my friend, her mother, she told me that if I didn't do anything wrong, then I wouldn't have anything to fear from police. And I don't think she was ill-intentioned. I don't think she's racist. I just think it came from a certain level of ignorance. Like she's never lived a day in the color of a like the skin color of a Black person.
Yeah.
She's never had to deal with, like in her reality, in her world, if she didn't do anything wrong, she wouldn't have to fear police or,
Yeah.
being stopped for no reason.
And sorry, that's what I mean too by starting uncomfortable conversations. You know what I mean? Like, I know the conversation is already there
Yeah.
a lot, but when somebody approaches you in that way,
Yeah.
how do you start a conversation, to kind of shed light to the fact that, well, yeah, I do still have to worry about
Yeah.
certain things,
Yeah. So the tricky thing was that I was fairly young at that point. So
Yeah.
I wanted to believe her. I absolutely did. But like I said, out of the, like looking back at the last few years or even decade with the advancement in technology and the fact that everybody's kind of recording in real time what's been going on and now showing it to the world, that woman, I'm pretty sure, wouldn't say the same thing that she once said, right? So nobody is able to hide the truth anymore. It's finally coming out in that there has been inequality and, systemic racism, and, some people are treated differently. And now we do need to have these conversations, and we do need to give space to everybody's experience, right? So again, she has never lived a day as a Black person. She doesn't have a Black son. She never had to speak to her children about, what to do, how to handle police, how to handle if you get pulled over or any of those situations. But honestly, I feel like it all starts in the home. And I know that a lot of Black parents are having these conversations with their children. I know it's such a delicate subject, but I feel, and this again is just my opinion, I feel as though the conversations need to be had in a manner where the young children, the Black children, they're the ones that have the power. They're the ones that need to be able to communicate to the police, like, hey, what you're doing is wrong. And if you continue to do it, there's going to be certain repercussions, consequences, because I know my rights and I'm not afraid. Like I'm, taking up my space. I'm not doing anything wrong. And, whoever it is, your supervisor or whatever legal procedures we have to go through to make sure that you're held accountable for your mishaps, well then I'm prepared. My parents are prepared. They know what they're supposed to do. We know our rights. We spoke to a lawyer, whatever the case is. So I would like parents to, like instill this level of confidence and take away this level of fear. Because I know, like, when they have those conversations, it's like, you have to do this, you have to do this, don't do this, especially do this, look here, look there, put your hands here, put your hands here. And again, if you're not doing anything wrong, without being, rude or disrespectful, communicate in a way that like you would communicate with anybody else who's supposed to be protecting you or upholding your rights and your freedoms and stuff like that. So that's that. I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, and you're talking about the conversation that should be had between Black people. Most of the times it's Black men, unfortunately. Black women have to deal with it as well, but not as much as Black men. And we'll get into how to speak to our children in another question that I'll ask you. But the dialogue between somebody of color and a police officer, you're talking about that kind of dialogue and how to approach it, right?
Yeah, like I remember I was working with homeless people a few years back, and I had a meeting with the police headquarters, and I had told them, and I told them that I knew that they knew what I was about to say, and that I knew that they would agree with me, but they wouldn't act on it. And what I said is that whenever they see one of their colleagues doing something wrong, that it's their duty to stop them. You know what I mean? And you're doing them a favor. You're doing everybody in that situation a favor, because at the end of the day, like, there are bad police officers. Like some of them get through. I don't know how, I don't know what their hiring process is, but some police officers are able to fake it enough where they can get on the job. And again, these people are human. They go through life same way that everybody else goes through life. They have ups and downs. You know what I mean? Like somebody could have had an argument that morning and have no idea how to get rid of those heavy feelings, and they take it onto the job and they just want to let it out on somebody else. And it's their partner's job to stop them and say like, hey, I don't know what's going on with you, but whatever the case is, like, you're going down a path that, like, it's not going to be a good one. And if they don't do anything, well, then they should both be held accountable.
That's an amazing, you went up to the police officer and said that.
Oh, it was a whole group of them. It was like a
Wow.
whole room of them. And
that's an amazing example of how to start a conversation that's very uncomfortable.
yeah, but I told them I know that they know this, but they rarely act on it, because I've been in so many situations where, like, I had to turn to the partner police officer and I'm like, are you really gonna allow this to go on? Are you gonna allow it to happen? And I don't know if it's like an unspoken rule or code that they have where, like, they just don't intervene, but I think they should. I think they really should start intervening. And
Yeah.
like,
At this point, I feel like you're right. It is some kind of unwritten rule, because George Floyd, it was the biggest example of people just standing by and not saying anything for murder. Yeah.
yeah, I like, I know, I know the face, I know the name. I haven't watched the video.
I couldn't get myself to watch it either.
Yeah, I haven't. I heard about, like, somebody described what happened up to a certain point, and then I had asked them to stop basically describing what happened. But it's a human, I don't want to use a wrong word here, but trait or characteristic where, like, if there's one person there, then they're more likely to step in and intervene than if there's a whole group of people. And so, like, we kind of just deflect the responsibility onto someone else. It's like, okay, well, if that person's not doing anything, well, it's okay for me not to do anything, right? And so I could see how that makes sense, where, like, somebody should do something, but they end up not doing something. But yeah, all that to say is that I hope that my message landed with them, and that, like, it's, even though in the moment it might be a bruise to somebody's ego, in the long haul, I hope that everybody understands that it's for the best situation of everybody, especially the people that they're supposed to be serving in that instance, right?
Yeah. It takes a level of bravery to address something like that and to start a conversation that's uncomfortable. So that, of course, has to be taken into consideration. Many people aren't brave enough to start the conversation, but once you are and you do it in a way that's respectful, like you did, it's almost impossible for the person not to reflect on what you said, even if their ego is bruised for a little bit.
Mhm.
Afterwards they will reflect on it and hopefully do the right thing.
Yeah, and I gave them a real life example. I told them, like, 'cause prior to that incident, I was in an interaction with a police officer that was not going well, and there was three other police officers there that did nothing, and I had asked them to like step in, and they obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, they took the side of their colleague, which was unfortunate. And I had explained this to the whole group of people. And I told them, I'm like, hey, I have my rights. I'm a person. I have my dignity. You guys are supposed to be serving and protecting, and I'm asking for help. You know what I mean? And it's like, who am I supposed to call? Like, it's the police that are doing this stuff. Like, who do I call? I can't call the police on the police. You know what I mean? So it's like, in that instance, like, what am I supposed to do? Because I know if I raise a finger, I'm gonna get in trouble. Everything's gonna turn back on me, right? So it's like, what do you do?
Yeah, and that leads us to the next question, which is, in your experience, would you say there's even a willingness to learn when it comes to other people's culture? And is there a way we can get people to genuinely be interested in learning?
Like everyday people.
Yeah, everyday people. And I guess in this case, we talk about police, because, there's a certain level of power there, and
Mhm.
there's an ability to, if you're willing to go into certain communities and mingle and
Yes.
feel the people, to change. But are you really willing to do that? And if so, or if not, for certain people, how do we get them
Yeah.
to do that?
You know what? I think I'm gonna I'm gonna assume I'm gonna operate from a certain level of thinking that there are police officers who actually do want to make a difference. But like I said, there's gonna be some that are just very close-minded, you know what I mean? And like I said, we're all from different backgrounds and origins, and we view things differently. We're all from different kind of worlds, perspectives, and stuff like that. So I know, and I've spoken to, and but it's very
It's a tricky
tricky
question.
because it is very tricky because in the instances where the police were cool with me, or they allowed space for me to hear me out and stuff, it was in a professional setting. You know what I mean? But like, let's say, for example, I was in a professional setting. Let's say, for example, I'm walking down a street in inner city neighborhood, dressed a certain way. Are they going to still give me that same courtesy? You know what I
Right.
mean? Are they going to approach me in that same kind of, with that same energy, right?
Yeah.
So I can say like, oh yeah, this police officer is nice and it's cool, and that's the way he interacted with me. But it was because it was in that setting. Maybe it's because the age that I'm at now. But let's say again, if I'm a 13, 14, 15-year-old teenager, um, in a certain neighborhood, are they going to still, that same person, are they going to still afford me that same courtesy? And to be honest, I don't know. I don't think so. I've had an interaction with a police officer when I was 14, and I ran into that same police officer in a professional setting where the company that I was working for had to work in collaboration with the police, and he was very different. He was very different. So I don't know if it was like if he's grew or evolved, or because it was a professional setting, or you know what I mean. So it is very tricky, but like I said, I want to assume that there are good police officers out there and that they want to make a difference. And some of them want to think outside the box and kind of start to mend that relationship with the communities that they're policing. So
Yeah.
I've seen videos where there was a huge dodgeball game at a park, and police were playing dodgeball with the people. And I was recently approached by a police officer in the East End of Montreal to get my story out there and to get yoga out there for those communities. So this level of, thinking outside the box makes me believe that, they actually do want to do good, and they want to, have a different approach, and they want to mend those relationships. But on the other hand, like, I know that they're kind of confined and bound by a certain mode of operation, a certain way of doing things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's to find that balance. But I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like there's still no reason or excuse not to do the right thing. And I put air quotes there because the right thing can kind of, like, there might be a gray zone, but, like, I don't know, abusing your power or not upholding the law, that's clearly the wrong thing.
Yeah. And just the example that you gave about the dodgeball and them being almost like invited to like a dodgeball, that's an interesting way to kind of get people interested as well. Like, integrate them into the community and see how we live, see how we eat, see how we have fun, see how we love. And then, then somebody whose ego or perspective may be not ideal could start shifting that perspective. So
Yeah,
that's
I agree with that. I agree
that's
with
a
that. It's like you can't just come around when there's a problem, right? You have to come around
yeah,
more often, and people have to be able to associate you, like, not only like, oh, whenever I see a uniform, it's either a problem, or like they're taking one of my family members away, or they're doing something that's not making me feel comfortable for whatever reason. It's
that's
like, come
right.
around when the summertime's happening, people are outside, they're having block parties or whatever the case is. Like, come get involved with the community and, play the games, and again, start to build and mend those relationships.
That's right. That's right. So let's break down the word privilege and what it truly means. I think that I was talking to a female mutual friend of ours about Amy Cooper and how she'll go down in history as one of the people who was able to allow us to witness privilege in such an unapologetic way, like so raw, so real. And the fact that she was able to assume that her whiteness combined with her quote unquote feeling threatened would automatically result in a not so favorable outcome for a Black man. She was kind of just the epitome of privilege, right? So how would you say that the word privilege can be expressed in a way that is truly understood from people who may not, they might hear the word privilege and be like, oh, there they go again with that word privilege. Like, how
Yeah.
can that be expressed in a way that's understood and not just thrown around?
I don't think privilege is a bad thing. I think if you're privileged, depending on where your privilege is, I think you're fortunate. I just feel like you need to acknowledge that you have this privilege.
Yeah, and what I mean specifically is the white privilege, privilege
Right,
over,
right.
yeah,
So to say, like, for example, if it's a white person now, that's like I've heard many white people say, like, yes, I have this privilege, for whatever the case is. Like, I know that, like, I can do this or that, and, like, I won't get in trouble, or I have things easier, or because of the way the system is, I'm privileged. But there are some white people that are actually trying to undo that, right? They're trying to make everything a level playing field. The the problem lies when someone is clearly privileged, but they don't acknowledge it, right? They want to assume that, like, they're in the position that they're in solely based on the fact that they worked hard or whatever it is, other than um, them being born into that situation, right? So again, I don't think privilege is in of itself is wrong or bad. I just think that you just have to understand that some people have a certain level and some people don't. Like me as a Black man, I have certain privileges. I know that, like, for the most part, whenever I travel, I can depending on the country, I feel like I can walk down most countries at any time of night alone. You know what I mean? Like I went to Spain this last September, and I left a group of friends that were hanging out at a bar, and I decided to walk back to the hotel by myself. And it never occurred to me that like, oh, I was unsafe or something could happen. And I actually got lost and flagged down a driver, asked him for directions, and he was like, "Oh, I'll bring you." You know, he was like, "Come in my car, and I'll drive you there." And at no point did I feel unsafe. Now, if I were to tell a woman that she could go to Spain and walk at any time of night and get into a random person's car without having fear, and then argue with her if she was like, no, that I can't do that, it makes me feel unsafe, I'd be like, no, you're being unreasonable. That's me speaking from a certain level of ignorance and not acknowledging my privilege,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like that's where some white people, that's how they sound, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you can do that. But I was like, no, I can't. I've tried it and it didn't end well. Or somebody that I know that looks like me tried it, it didn't end well. Or I didn't get that job because of like this. And it's like, oh no, well, you must have not got it for some other reason. It's like, no,
Yeah.
man.
You just raised
Like,
an aha moment there for me, because anytime that one class of people will say, no, in that situation, I would not feel safe, or in that situation, I think that I would be judged in this way, or in that situation, fill in the blanks. Anytime that that happens for a certain class of people, and you know that it doesn't happen for another, that's privilege.
right.
You know, like when for instance, a Black person tries to get a house in a certain neighborhood and they do not get it, in the back of their mind, it'll always be like, I wonder if it's because I'm Black. So it's not always the fact that it will always be because of, but as soon as the person has that little doubt in their head, then there's privilege for somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it works with, job opportunities, property opportunities. So it's just to acknowledge that like unless you flat out hear like, oh, you didn't get that job because you're Black, or you didn't get that job because you're a woman, or whatever the case is, then like again, you'll never know for certain. But people are not like, they have intuition, like they're not stupid, right? So it's just to actually acknowledge someone else's is reality, and say like, hey, this could actually be a possibility, and that in of itself is privilege, right? It's like, oh man, I never have to worry about that because I am this or I'm that,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. The
So,
not having to worry puts you
right,
in that privilege
right,
box. And it's not to say, again, it's not to say that it's always the case that because you were a woman, this happened, or because you were Black, this happened. It's just that because you have that fear or that question, then another class of people is privileged over you.
right, exactly. So let's
Yeah.
say, for example, like a woman could leave her group of friends at 2 o'clock in the morning and journey to a hotel and risk the chance of getting lost. And something might happen to her and something might not happen to her.
Yeah,
But she has to think about that, right? She's like, oh,
exactly.
I'm weighing the pros and cons. I'm taking this risk, as opposed to myself. Like that thought never crossed my mind. It's like, I'm tired. I want to go. I'm going to go. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like I don't have to think about my safety and any of that. And my friends as well, like they're like, "Oh, you're leaving? Okay, we'll see you in the morning." And
yeah,
it's like, if a
right.
girl were to leave, I would be like, "Hey, are you sure? Like, do you want me to come with you?" Or you know what I mean? So, like for everybody, it's like we're at ease with this situation. Like we don't have to think more about it.
Sorry, I keep muting every now and then because I always worry that my son will come into the conversation from where he is.
No worries.
So before our children get their belief systems tampered with,
Mm,
they can't understand why there's even an issue. Like, why would it even bother you that I play with this person? I believe that for children, racism is very confusing. They only know love. That's my belief. So it is our responsibility to articulate in conversations, into conversation that will help them understand what's going on, and for many times for us as Black parents, how to face it and how to make the situations better. So how would you say, as I know that you're a father, do we talk to our children about all of this?
Yes, we definitely do. But like you said, it is a tricky conversation to have, because like I feel like you said, I feel like, and I agree with you, like children start off with love in their hearts. And I feel like hate and racism and all of that stuff, prejudice, that's all something that's taught, right? They're not born thinking that, one person is better than the other, or that I can't play with this person, or you know what I mean? Like they don't care who it is. If you're nice, you want to play with me, I want to play with you. You know what I mean? It's not any more complicated than that. I think the conversation should be had, but not before the experience. And I know this is super up for debate. I just feel like, as opposed to the, I don't know. Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. Now that I think about
No,
it a little
this
more.
one, I truly, when I ask this question, I truly want to know people like you's opinion,
Yeah.
the people who are really, conscious and stuff, because I have a son, he's
Yeah.
8. I have a
Yeah.
daughter, she's 6, and I have another son, he's 10 months. But I kind of agree with you that I want to wait until the situation happens, but then I'm wondering, should I wait? Because then is he even prepared for when it, what comes? So I'm kind
Yeah.
of, and he's already experienced, somebody say le petit brun, or, like they're talking about something and they'll see le brun,
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
And sorry, how old is he?
He's 8. Yeah, he's going to be
8.
9 in
Okay.
March. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I feel like at that age, not to say that it's okay, but I feel like it would be easier to explain. It would be easier for an 8-year-old to grasp the concept. I was trying to think about like trying to explain it to my son,
Yeah.
who's 2.5, and I feel like it would be like nearly impossible to say
Yeah,
like
it's not the
that.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, like that person doesn't want to play with you because of your skin color. Like
Because
he would
how
be so
accurate would it
confused.
even be? Yeah. The
Yeah.
person at 2 years old, he wants to play with you. If he doesn't want to play with you, it's because a butterfly caught his eye,
Right. Right. So, but now it's like, do we wait till the child comes to you and it's like, hey, that person doesn't want to play with me, and he said it's because I live here, or because this is what you do for a living and this is what his dad does for a living, or it's because of your skin color, or you don't speak the same language, or whatever it is that makes them different from each other. To try to explain that, it's like it's super delicate, and it's like, do you wait till it happens? Yeah, I feel like I would wait, because I don't want to be the one to plant the seed, but I would want to be the one to try to uproot it and say like, you know that's their choice,
Yeah.
whether they want to or not, but don't let it change you, or it doesn't change your worth, or you know what I mean.
I've been struggling with that a little bit, and I did have to wait until there was a little comment, because it just happened. But you also have to know your child, because at a certain age you're going to have the conversation regardless, because some children won't even go to you. They won't tell you what's going on. So
Mhm.
the more I'm thinking about it and I'm having the conversations, I realize at a certain age you have to address it in a way that they understand that it's not necessarily the person's fault that they're acting this way. They've learned it. in somehow, some way from their parents or from, from wherever it may be,
Mhm.
that they need to just be prepared that people can say hurtful things, and hurt people, right?
Right. I think, yeah, I think you nailed it on the head there, and that they learned it from somewhere, and just try to explain that like, it's that's how they choose to see the world. And it's not, I feel like it's definitely, what I would add to that is like, it's not the child's place to try to undo that. You know what I
Mm.
mean? It's like, you don't have to prove yourself or prove your worth, or you know what I mean? Like, if they choose not to play with you because of that, like, it doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't, like, it's not your place to say like, okay, well, like, I'm gonna, you know, prove my worth, or
Mhm.
that I'm this way or that way.
Yeah, you're
So
already enough. Yeah.
exactly.
And move towards people who have the same vibration as you. They might not understand all that, but yeah, yeah,
Exactly,
in certain
exactly.
terms, like you tell them that it's okay, you'll find your tribe. It's that one person. We pray that they learn, which is why
Mhm.
I kind of want to know how to even get people like that, because especially at a young age, I think in the school systems, it's very important to have them really understand what it feels like to, to be a class of people who haven't had a voice for a long time, and still to this day struggle to find a voice. So the school systems at a very young age need to show all of these beautiful colored people, from white to brown to everything in between, that we're all one.
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's my opinion. The school system really needs to get involved in this, because sometimes parents don't give the good example. Like, it's just the fact, right?
Right. No, I agree with you. And I think what I'm hearing more and more is that there's more children of color that are being afforded scholarships to certain high schools,
Mm.
like private schools that, like, their tuition is fairly expensive. So I think that's really a step in the right direction, where a bunch of these privileged white kids are now going to school with like a person of color, and like, they're kind of being exposed to them and their reality, and all of that way before they even leave high school. So I think that's really important, because chances are they're not seeing them in their neighborhoods, they're not seeing them in their inner city leagues that they play in, they're not seeing them, like, you know what I mean? Like, chances are these kids are playing like hockey and stuff like that, or whatever the case is. So the fact that they can, see them for 5 years, nearly
Yeah,
every day, I think that's huge, right?
huge.
So
Yeah.
the perception that they're getting from Black people is in the media, is in the movies, and I think as of recently, there's a lot more positive representation for, in the media and in music, in the culture, overall, for Black people. But like, going back 10, 20 years, the music wasn't always the best, the movie representation characters weren't always the best. And again, people are not actually making the conscious decision to say like, oh, this is a movie, not all Black people are like this, or this is entertainment, this is a rap video, not all Black women and Black men do this.
Yeah, right.
So to see just a normal Black kid going to school with you, I think that's huge.
It's huge, and at a young age, like you say, for 5 years they follow. And when you're a child, you're so innocent, and the questions that come out of your mouth are innocent as well. So they will see the difference. They'll see that somebody's brown, but it won't bother them. They'll ask
Mm-mm.
questions. Oh, why is your hair like that? They want to touch you, they want, but it's so innocent at that
Yeah,
age. So they
yeah,
grow to learn to know the person for who they really are, and not just, the little differences that they have. So yeah, I think that's it's crucial to expose at a very young age.
most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, children are coming from a place of love and curiosity, right? They're
Mhm.
they're discovering the world for the first time, and like, if all their family members are white with blonde hair, blue eyes, and then they go out in the world and they see someone different. It's like, oh, that person's different. But, it's not like, oh, they're better or worse than I am. They're just different, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And the teachers have to be so well chosen, because they play a huge part in kind of interfering in certain conversations that children can have. If they see that something is going kind of like the wrong way, they can steer it over and say, yes, he's brown, he's a beautiful, like, look how beautiful that color is, and look how beautiful your color is. And it's so crucial, just like police officers, to have the right people, especially in certain jobs. Because
oh yeah,
if you have a racist pilot, it's not as detrimental as if you have a racist police officer or a racist
right,
teacher.
right,
Teachers are so important. I have so much
right.
respect for teachers, and it's just really important for us to make the right decisions and who's going to be in those positions of power.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. So my last question to you is, how do we become of service in our own way when it comes to, I guess I'm not going to say racism, but when it comes to integration and being one?
I think if you ask yourself that question enough times, I feel like you'll come up with the answer. And I feel like everybody's answer will be different. I was blown away to find out that a 9-year-old who is also part of the 2022 class of Black Changemakers, she heard or saw what happened to George Floyd, and she said, how can I make a difference? And she started her own business where she makes head wraps, and part of the proceeds goes towards a Black community organization in the West Island. And so, I feel like understanding that if you see the world, like if there's a problem in the world, instead of, just putting that responsibility on someone else to fix, take it on your own shoulders. And you don't have to take it on your own shoulders by yourself. And I know that, like, we didn't create the problem, right? But we're in it, right? We're facing it. And if we want our children to have to deal with a different problem, then we have to resolve this one. Because if we don't resolve this one, then they're gonna have to resolve it, or so on and so forth. So just try to get your creativity in there and understand that there's no limits, and just try to approach a situation from a mindset of, like, resolution. I want to resolve whatever it is, and help. I want to be of service. And she does it through head wraps. I try my best to do it through yoga. So it's really for, like, everybody to find what really speaks to them and how they see the world, and what they can add to it, to try to make it a better place. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You give a platform for people to speak their ideas. So it's really, it doesn't have to look like anything that's already out there. It doesn't have to look like something that somebody else is already doing. And it doesn't have to, you don't have to start off huge. You don't have to start off big. You can even, I don't know, make a program for elementary schools to have people go in and speak, especially around Black History Month, because I'm sure that, the schools would be open to engaging in these conversations, and they probably just don't know how to approach it themselves. So they're like, okay, well, you know what I mean? It's not ours to fix. But if someone comes with a solution, then yeah, we'll gladly accept that, right? So it's really challenging for people to think.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially think of solutions, right? They just want to complain about problems.
Yeah.
Um, So
it's another tricky question because the individual is so different, so it can look very different for different people. But if
right.
you find somebody that you resonate with as well, if I see you and I see that you're doing amazing work with your yoga, you can go and gravitate towards that person, and whatever he or she is doing, you get involved with that as well. It doesn't have to, you don't have to reinvent the wheel as well.
Exactly.
So it's great.
Exactly.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. It's
And I would actually say, yeah, if somebody else is doing something that you're like, wow, that's different or that's unique, and I would like to get behind that, very rarely are people going to turn down, an extra hand or, extra set of eyes or extra way of thinking.
as
So yeah, if somebody's already, you know, heading down that road in that direction, and you want to kind of add some fuel to that, then I would definitely say go for it. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. Brandon, always such a pleasure to conversate with you. Thank
My
you so much for
pleasure.
your time.
Thank
I hope
you.
people get a lot out of this because I know I did. I had a few aha moments where I'm like, oh, with the children and with yeah. So thank you very much for this conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Tanya.
As always, I thank you for tuning in. These episodes are meant to be of massive value to you, and so I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, all I ask in return is for you to give it a thumbs up, give it some love in the reviews, share with 1 or 2 friends whom you know will benefit from hearing this content. Check out the links in the description. Continue to lead with empathy, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Many blessings.